This deal is the best that could have been obtained in the circumstances. Do recall it is a temporary ceasefire. It is not a peace agreement. It is part of the long series of military encounters that we have had between Israel and the Palestinians that go back several decades. I think there is no doubt whatsoever that the presence of Donald Trump and the victory of Donald Trump in the last presidential election and his personal commitment to obtaining a ceasefire before he gets sworn in were crucial factors in ensuring that this deal went through.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. The Israel-Hamas deal comes into effect tomorrow, Sunday the 19th of January. That leads me to ask, who benefits more from this deal, Israel or Hamas? Will phase 2 of the deal, which calls for Israel's complete withdrawal from Gaza, happen? If it does, who will rule in Gaza at this point? Because on this critical issue, the deal seems to be silent. Joining me to explore these concerns is one of India's foremost experts on the Middle East, former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Oman, and the United Arab Emirates, Talmiz Ahmad. Mr. Ahmad, let me start with a general question. Israel and Hamas have agreed on a deal which comes into effect tomorrow, Sunday the 19th. So to begin with, let me ask a very simple question. How do you view this deal?
This deal has been long overdue and has been delayed in order to accommodate Benjamin Netanyahu's domestic concerns and interests, specifically keeping his government together. He has an extreme right-wing government, and there are elements within the government that are totally opposed to any deal with the Palestinian side. Any accommodation with the Palestinians is anathema to them. This deal was actually put on the table by the Americans as long ago as May, initially accepted by Netanyahu, and then his right-wing colleagues told him that this is not acceptable to us, and he withdrew. Do recall here that 10,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza because of this delay of a few months on the Israeli side.
But tell me something else. That is part of the background of the deal. How do you view the deal itself?
This deal is the best that could have been obtained in the circumstances. Do recall it is a temporary ceasefire. It is not a peace agreement. It is part of the long series of military encounters that we have had between Israel and the Palestinians that go back several decades. You had with the beginning with the first Intifada in 1982. So such bloody encounters have taken place constantly. They have become increasingly lethal as Israel has used more firepower against the Palestinians, and over a period of time, the Palestinians too have also built up certain capabilities. Obviously, it remains an extremely unequal encounter as far as military capability is concerned, but the main point to be noted is that at no stage have the Palestinians, despite this asymmetry in firepower, have ever given up on their resistance. So this is just one more phase. Do recall that from 2006 to today, there have been at least 5 or 6 major military encounters between the Palestinians and the Israelis. This is just one more phase.
Now, it's interesting that you call the deal the best in the circumstances. The truth is, the deal, as you pointed out in your first answer, could have happened any time since May of last year. But in fact, it's happened 8 months after May. Has it happened now because of pressure from Donald Trump and the intervention of his Middle Eastern envoy, Steve Witkoff? Does Trump get the credit?
I think there is no doubt whatsoever that the presence of Donald Trump and the victory of Donald Trump in the last presidential election and his personal commitment to obtaining a ceasefire before he gets sworn in were crucial factors in ensuring that this deal went. Do recall here that over the last 15 months, the Biden administration has not covered itself in glory. They have been taken advantage of by the Israeli government led by the Prime Minister, who has played them ruthlessly. He has humiliated the American president publicly from time to time, but at no stage has the American government been able to stand up to Netanyahu and to the Israelis in terms of their maximalist demands. You recall here that from time to time, Biden would speak about the need for humanitarian assistance. He would speak about the need for a ceasefire, but never once was he able to follow through. We now know from Bob Woodward's book, War, that Biden used to abuse Netanyahu in the privacy of the White House, call him ugly names, but never had the political courage to confront the Israeli leader in public. Whatever has happened today is entirely due to the presence of Donald Trump and Netanyahu's keen interest in ensuring that he accommodates Donald Trump in terms of the ceasefire because he has a longer term agenda where he wants Trump on his side.
Let's go to the question, who does this deal benefit more? Now, as you know, the deal consists of three phases. I'll go through each of them one by one. In phase one, Israel will get back 33 hostages over a period of 42 days, but without really withdrawing its troops. It's only repositioning them in phase one. How significant a gain for Israel is that?
You see, it's very difficult to say because even phase two has to be still negotiated. Only the broad framework is in place. This was a deal that had to be given life. There was tremendous anger within Israel from the families of the hostages who believed that their prime minister was more concerned about his political benefits and advantages rather than bringing the hostages back. Indeed, they saw with horror that hostages were being killed from time to time because of the massive bombardment and military action that the Israelis were carrying forward in Gaza. So I would say to you that there has been this pressure to get at least some of the hostages, 33 hostages back. This was the Israeli interest. And in return, of course, they are releasing certain Palestinian prisoners. Do recall here that Israel has several thousand prisoners as Palestinian prisoners.
Can I interrupt? Israel is getting back 33 hostages over a period of 42 days in phase one, but it's not actually withdrawing its troops from Gaza. All it's doing is repositioning them from the center to the periphery, but they will still be in Gaza, still in a position to attack again should they want to. So Israel has got what it wants, a sizable release of hostages without withdrawing troops. So how much of a gain for Israel is that?
I think on paper, the truce agreement is a little more complex and detailed. The 33 hostages are to be released in phase one. In phase two, the balance of the hostages are to be released, and Israel is required to vacate all of the Gaza Strip. So there is a very
Let's talk
major
about phase
aspect.
one. Let's talk about phase one. Phase two hasn't even been negotiated as yet. In phase one, is the balance of advantage on Israel's side?
You see, that is where you enter into the area of uncertainty. There is a published agreement. That published agreement has American endorsement. It has three phases. The first phase is quite clear and it will be implemented from Sunday onward. It will last for a few weeks. You have then phase two kicking in, and phase two is the crucial one. Subject to mutual accommodation and mutual trust, you are likely to see the balance of the hostages, many of them armed forces personnel from the Israeli side, as well as certain other prisoners being released. I think, yes, it will be negotiated.
Let's stick
Much depends on what the Trump administration does.
Can I interrupt? Let's stick to phase one. We'll come to phase two later. Let's not conflate the two together because phase two hasn't even been negotiated as yet. We don't know whether phase two will happen. Let's simply concentrate on phase one for a start. In phase one, Israel is getting back 33 of its hostages over a period of 42 days, but it is not withdrawing troops, it's only repositioning them. And therefore, I ask, is the balance of advantage in phase one on Israel's side?
The phase one is just for a few weeks. It's crucial that there is an exchange of hostages and prisoners. But do recall here also that there will be a massive increase in the supply of humanitarian assistance. 500 to 600 trucks are expected to enter Gaza as compared to 30 or 40 over the last month. So I think there are important aspects. Over this period, you will see politics in play, politics in Israel, politics in the United States. I think the United States is not likely to withdraw from this deal. I think that Donald Trump is likely to support the progress being made in regard to phase two. So I would not rubbish it at this stage.
But there's no progress being made with regard to phase two at the moment. Let me make that very clear to the audience. The negotiation for phase two will only start on the 16th day of phase one. That's still 17, 18 days away. So, which is why I'm saying let's first focus on phase one. We'll come to phase two and phase three afterwards. Now, let's look at the situation in phase one from Hamas's point of view. Hamas's key concern was not just a ceasefire, but the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. That is not happening in phase one. What is happening in phase one is Hamas will get several hundred Palestinian prisoners released. There will be permission for displaced Gazans to go back to their homes, and there will be perhaps as many as 600 trucks a day of humanitarian aid, relief supplies, and fuel. But the key thing that Hamas wanted, the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza, is not happening in phase one. So even when you look at it from Hamas's point of view as opposed to Israel's point of view, doesn't the balance of advantage in phase one lie with Israel, not with Hamas?
The truce agreement has to be seen as an integrated arrangement. The phases are for expressions of mutual goodwill and mutual trust. After a long period of conflict, 15 months, and the death of 46,000 people in Gaza, as also the trauma that Israel suffered on 7th October 2023, all of these have to, therefore, the peace process has to be slow. But I believe that the phase one and phase two, I think they are likely to move forward reasonably well.
Let me ask you this. Phase two is when a permanent ceasefire will come into effect. Phase two is when Israel will finally withdraw from Gaza. Suppose phase two doesn't happen. There is division in the Israeli cabinet. Smotrich and Ben Gvir are against phase two happening completely and in an unreserved way. Suppose phase two doesn't happen. It hasn't been negotiated as yet. I'm pointing that out again. The negotiations for phase two only start on the 16th day of phase one. So suppose phase two doesn't happen, what happens then?
Your concerns are well placed. By the time phase two emerges, you will find that it will all depend on the state of politics in Israel and the state of politics in Washington. Netanyahu is very anxious to show his that he is interested in getting the hostages back, and particularly the release of the women hostages and those who are children and injured. Getting them back is already indication that he is concerned about hostages. The balance of the hostages are still there. I mean, there are about 60 or 70 hostages who still remain to be liberated. Now, what will depend on how Netanyahu senses the political scenario at home and to what extent the Trump administration is anxious to ensure phase two goes forward as well.
Can
Your
I ask you
concerns are
this?
well taken. We
Can I
already have
can I
indications.
ask you this? If phase two doesn't happen, and that is a real possibility today, if phase two doesn't happen, will the deal have benefited Israel more than Hamas?
I don't think this is plus or minus because you will go back to a status quo ante. It is not a question of benefit. What would Israel have got? It got back 33 hostages, but 63 or 60 hostages or more are still in Hamas hands.
Of which
And what will Israel
34
do?
of which 34 are believed to be dead.
We don't know anything. Let's not jump on because Israeli. All the information we get is from Israeli and American sources. No authentic sources. Large quantum of misinformation. My own view is this: let us watch what Trump does in the early stages of his administration.
Let me
My
ask you
own
this.
feeling is, assessment is that he would be anxious to see phase two go ahead successfully.
Well, I'm not so sure how anxious Trump will be to see phase two go ahead successfully. What Trump wanted was the return of hostages before his inauguration. That process has begun. 33 are going to be returned over the next 42 days. Thereafter, Trump has also said publicly to Netanyahu, do what you want to do, but do it quickly. So if Netanyahu were to choose at the end of phase one not to proceed with phase two, but to resume the war, it's not by any means certain Trump will object. That's why I ask you again, will phase
Now,
one have left the balance of advantage with with Israel rather than Hamas?
please permit me to respond in the detail that this deserves. The first point is the quote you have given of Donald Trump was made a year and a half ago and is now quite irrelevant. Since then, he has won the election. He has been actively involved in the peace process. In fact, the assessment is that his role and his envoy's role was crucial to the success that we finally have. Now, that is the main point. I do agree that Netanyahu has made certain remarks at home suggesting that if the Hamas reneges on its deal, the option of the military assault remains. But my question is even broader. What is Israel still seeking to achieve? As far as Gaza and the region is concerned, it has emasculated all its force. I cannot see any military or strategic objective that Israel would have in order to continue the military operations. On the contrary, I would point out to you that there is a considerable quantum of international opprobrium as far as Israel is concerned, and indeed Netanyahu is aware of it. Publicly, he postures and says, I'm not bothered about what people have to say, I'm only concerned about Israel. No, he's only concerned about Benjamin Netanyahu. And I think that has been well exposed. I don't
So,
believe he is now keen to continue the war. I think that Donald Trump would also like to intervene to ensure at least phase two goes ahead. I
so
think I am
are you
not a
therefore
skeptic here.
are you therefore pretty confident phase two will happen? Is that what you're saying to me?
According to my assessment, when I look at the scenario objectively, I'm unable to see what advantage there is either on the Israeli side or the American side to come in the way of phase two. Now, there is one spoiler, and I should mention that, and that is the state of the Israeli government and domestic politics. Two people in the cabinet, Smorish and Ben Guer, have opposed the peace process and have said that they may even withdraw from the cabinet. Both have been privately assured, we are told in reports, that Israel retains the option of returning to war in case Hamas does anything wrong, does not live up to its expectations. Now, I personally can't see objectively that Hamas would do anything so stupid as to prevent phase two from being negotiated. So, what you are really left with is Netanyahu's assessment of his political fortunes. What we have read is that Netanyahu today has popular support to the extent of 70% at home for the peace process, for the truce process. Number two, he has enough majority in the Knesset to be able to see through this process, even if Smorish and Guer and Ben Guer withdraw, he is confident that he can hold his government together.
Then let me ask you this. If you are so confident that phase two will happen, who will rule in Gaza when phase two happens? Because when Israel withdraws, it will not accept Hamas ruling in Gaza. That is for certain. There is no way Netanyahu, or for that matter, anyone else in Israel, and I'll repeat that for the sake of the audience, anyone else in Israel would accept Hamas continuing to rule in Gaza. So when phase two happens, who will rule in Gaza? Because that's not covered in this deal.
You are absolutely right to raise this question because this has not been discussed in the public domain. The Americans have repeatedly criticized Netanyahu for not addressing the question of the day after. Even Blinken, in his last major speech, referred to this matter that at no stage did he see the Israeli leader discussing what is likely to happen later. My own view is that there has been a lot of reflection in this regard. Assuming that Israel goes ahead with phase two and withdraws from Gaza and creates a buffer zone of 800 meters all around Gaza in order to maintain its control over that strip, there is already going to be some degree of progress with regard to the day after. My personal view
No,
is
but who
that
will
at
rule
least
Gaza? Who will rule
I
Gaza?
am I'm responding to you. If you could just give me a moment, I feel that on the Palestinian side, they have prepared themselves for the day after far better than the Israelis have, certainly in the public domain.
What is the
I
preparation?
personally feel you are likely to see a revived, reconstructed, and reformed Palestine Authority, something that has the support of the American side. We don't know. I mean, let me stress to
Just a
you.
moment. Mahmoud Abbas has made it clear he's not anxious or keen to get into Gaza. The Palestine Authority is effectively washing its hands off the problem. It doesn't want to get involved. So, where do you get this confidence that a reformed, revived Palestine Authority will want to get involved in Gaza?
You are absolutely right to be skeptical. And skepticism is the order of the day where West Asia is concerned. But I would like to mention to you what we are looking at is a new West Asia, a West Asia that has experienced extraordinary upheaval. And this is the time for new ideas and new thoughts to flourish. And I believe that a reformed and reconstructed Palestine Authority is the only way forward. I believe that the Arab states, particularly Saudi Arabia, or UAE, and Qatar, are going to push, and Egypt are going to push for the Palestine Authority. I don't believe you will have Israeli occupation of Gaza. In what shape or form this emerges, we still do not know. Certain ideas are being thrown up in the public domain, but I'm at this stage not skeptical. I personally believe that the Palestine Authority has within it the capacity for a fresh process of administration in that beleaguered territory.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Let's move on to phase three. If we get to phase three, and many people believe that is so far down the road, there's no guarantee we'll get to it. But if we get to phase three, it involves reconstruction. Do you believe major Arab powers like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Oman will play a significant role in reconstructing Gaza?
Whatever happens in phase three will emerge from the success of phase one and phase two. And we have every right to be skeptical in regard to both these phases, and certainly with regard to phase two. Assuming it all goes well, assuming that you have a fair exchange of prisoners and hostages, that the bodies that have to go back to Israel go back, there is a sense of overall a sense of personal comfort and possibly even closure on the Israeli side, and a certain degree of looking forward after all the carnage of the last 15 months on the Palestinian side, looking forward with some degree of optimism. That would create the condition for going forward. Now, none of us is going to play down the horrendous challenges that are still ahead of us.
But
I
will
would
the
put down
Arabs
as the first, just let me complete
but
two
will the
sentences.
Arabs get involved in reconstruction?
There will be, see, there is, this carnage has happened before, and Qatar has been very active in supporting reconstruction. But carnage on this scale, where 70 to 80% of the infrastructure is destroyed, has not happened before, and it will take a very long time for it to be realized. For example, we know the instance of Iraq. After so many years of 10 years or 15 years of conflict, you found reconstruction was the principal challenge of the Iraqi government, and it took a very long time. We are looking at a similar challenge in Syria as well. I personally feel Gaza may not be on the scale of Iraq and Syria. It's a much smaller space, much smaller population, but it is well within the capacity of the Arab states and the United Nations and other nations of goodwill to be able to see through resettlement and reconstruction.
Tell me, could India play a role in the reconstruction of Gaza? Is that likely or unlikely? Of course, I know it all depends upon Mr. Modi, but if he were to choose to want to involve himself because he wants to establish India as a power with an interest in the Middle East, could India get involved in reconstruction?
India can and should be involved with reconstruction. India has a long history of engagement on the Palestine issue. And after a little bit of a flip flop earlier, India has very clearly come out in favor of Palestinian interests. For its entities to take up reconstruction is not something that is beyond our capacity. Do recall that Indian companies have worked for several years in Iraq and in Libya and in the Gulf countries, and we are very good at this. And the scale of operations is such that they have need for every country that is willing to come in doing something for the people. Reconstruction is not something that you put up buildings on the place of rubble. You will immediately need to provide temporary housing for the people. You will have to set up medical facilities, food distribution, as well as educational facilities. You may initially see just a tent city in clean area. Construction will take a long time. I would say to put up an edifice will take anywhere between 1 to 3 years. And given the scale of operations, it will be a very long time. But I am not disheartened. I really believe that this is a golden opportunity for India to come forward clearly and robustly, and on behalf of the Palestinian brethren, offer its services towards reconstruction. It will be remembered with gratitude.
Finally, Mr. Ahmed, Netanyahu and Trump are said to be very close. And by agreeing to the deal now, Netanyahu has given Trump a victory even before Trump is sworn in. In return, what are the chances Trump will look the other way if Israel attacks Iran's nuclear installation, something it's been threatening to do for a long time?
You're absolutely right to raise this question. This is something that is being discussed very extensively today. what happens now. Now, all the public information that is coming from Israel is to suggest that Netanyahu is sharpening his knives and is seeking to co opt the Trump administration in a major assault upon Iran. This is being discussed in the American media and as also in the Israeli media. Honestly, we don't know. We don't know which way things will go. You have information on both sides. There is a suggestion that Iran is very close to developing nuclear weapons capabilities, and that some of its facilities are so difficult of access that the Israelis and the Americans may find it difficult to destroy them. My own view is, and this is a view as of now, and it may change with changing circumstances, I don't believe Iran has any interest whatsoever at this stage to develop nuclear weapons capabilities. I don't believe that. And the reason is very simple that immediately, if the Americans and the Israelis get a hint that weaponization is in progress, they will launch a massive assault upon Iran that will destroy not just its nuclear facilities, but its entire infrastructure. All the signals we are getting from Iran are quite different. Iran is holding out the olive branch. It is already in engagement with the Europeans. It is also talking to the IAEA, and it has given every indication to the incoming American administration that it would like to place its relationship at a new level. Separately and simultaneously, Iran has also concluded a comprehensive strategic partnership with the Russians, signaling that it is not totally isolated. What is the value and content of that agreement? We do not know. Certainly, I can't see the Russians involved with Iran militarily. I don't think that will happen. It's just a signal to us. Iran is not isolated. That is what they are telling us. But I personally think that at this point, I remain an optimist. I personally believe that there is a golden opportunity here for the Iranians to re engage with the Europeans and the Americans as they had done about 10 years ago. Do recall here, it is not the Iranians who withdrew from the nuclear agreement, it is the Israelis who pressurized the Trump administration to do so. I think the Trump administration may now see the wisdom in engaging with the Iranians and getting an agreement that Trump would then say is part of the a great deal maker that he is.
Mr. Ahmad, thank you very much indeed. I'm deeply grateful for your insights. And in particular, I want to repeat two very important things. You said you believe that the Israel-Hamas deal is the best in the circumstances that prevail at the moment. And you also said there is no doubt whatsoever that Trump and the influence that he's brought to bear should get the credit for ensuring that the deal happened now. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.